Welcome back to Homeless Crisis News. 800 arrests. Just 93 people were counted in Miami Beach. Officials called it the lowest number in recorded history. But across Miami-Dade, 1,184 people were living on the streets, the county's highest total since 2008. So, where did everyone really go? Some accepted shelter, some entered jail. Others may have crossed the causeway, slept beneath highways, disappeared into cars, or moved onto somebody else's floor. The beach looked cleaner, but the crisis did not follow the same map. And behind those visible numbers is a much larger population Miami's official street count cannot see at all. We will trace what happened after the tents vanished, examine the system behind nearly 800 arrests, and ask whether Miami reduced homelessness or simply moved it beyond the tourists, luxury towers, and cameras. Because an empty sidewalk can prove that people left, it cannot prove they found a permanent home. At sunrise, Miami Beach can look almost flawless. Hotel windows catch the first orange light. Delivery trucks prepare restaurants for another crowded day. Runners move along the waterfront while cleaners erase the evidence of the night before. Across the water, another morning begins differently. Under highway ramps and beside downtown bus stops, people fold blankets, protect backpacks, and search for shade before the heat settles over the concrete. Some have slept outside for years. Others are separated from the street by one borrowed couch, one motel room, or one friend who has not yet asked them to leave. These scenes belong to the same county, but not the same government. Miami Beach is its own city on the Barrier Islands. The city of Miami sits on the mainland. Miami-Dade County surrounds them both, along with dozens of other communities. That geography matters because a person removed from one jurisdiction does not disappear from the county. A short drive across the causeway can turn one city's reduction into another neighborhood's new arrival. That distinction is easy to miss in national headlines, where Miami Beach, downtown Miami, and the entire county are often compressed into one place and one outcome. In January 2026, Miami Beach counted 93 people sleeping outside, its lowest recorded total. The city of Miami counted 605. Across Miami-Dade, the count reached 1,184, the highest countywide street total since 2008. Those numbers describe a troubling contradiction, not an explanation. A point-in-time count captures where people are found during a single night. It cannot follow everyone who entered jail, slept inside a car, stayed temporarily with relatives, moved deeper into the dunes, or avoided the teams conducting the survey. It records a location, not the entire path that led someone there. For residents and businesses, fewer tents can still mean something real. Sidewalks become usable. Parks feel safer. Sanitation crews can work. Families may feel more comfortable returning to public spaces. Those outcomes should not be dismissed simply because they are visible. But visibility can also mislead. A city can improve a postcard without changing the life of the person removed from its frame. If your community is facing the same tension, tell us your city in the comments. And subscribe as we track where America's street crisis is moving next. Because Miami Beach did not reach 93 by waiting. It used arrests, surveillance, shelter, offers, and physical changes to public space. And what happened behind that deceptively clean shoreline is where the real story begins. The change began with a new legal pressure. Florida's House Bill 1365 took effect in October 2024. It prohibited counties and cities from allowing regular camping or sleeping on public property unless a designated site met state requirements. Beginning in January 2025, residents and businesses could seek court action against local governments accused of tolerating unauthorized public camping. The state law did not itself create a criminal penalty for every person sleeping outside, but it gave local governments a powerful reason to enforce their own ordinances more aggressively. Miami Beach already had rules against outdoor sleeping. What changed was the intensity. During 2025, police made roughly 800 camping arrests. Some involved the same individuals more than once. Officers also launched over 40 drone flights above the dunes, searching areas that could not easily be seen from the road. City records said those flights discovered dozens of encampments and led to several arrests. The surveillance changed the meaning of hiding. A person could move away from a hotel entrance, avoid the boardwalk, and sleep behind vegetation where tourists would never see them. But a camera in the sky could still find the blankets, bags, and flattened sand that suggested someone had built a place to survive the night. The physical landscape changed too. Concrete bumps appeared along sections of low walls, making them difficult to use as benches or beds. To supporters, those structures protected public spaces from becoming permanent sleeping areas. To critics, they represented a city redesigning architecture around the removal of exhausted bodies. Miami Beach says its strategy begins with services. Outreach teams operate daily. Officers are expected to offer an available shelter placement before making a camping arrest. The city argues that sleeping in dunes parks or crowded tourist areas exposes unhoused people to crime, weather, sanitation risks, and repeated conflict. That argument cannot simply be dismissed. Public spaces must remain usable, and leaving someone in an unsafe encampment is not automatically compassion. But an offer is not the same as an outcome. A shelter may separate couples, reject a pet, limit belongings, or place someone far from the people and services they know. Jail may clear a sidewalk, yet it cannot create an address. By morning, the wall is empty and the sand looks untouched. The public sees order restored. What it cannot see is where the person wakes up after release. To understand that journey, follow one woman whose life has moved between streets, shelters, and borrowed couches for nearly 15 years without ending. Just after midnight on a humid August night, Rebecca Sadoff prepared to sleep outside the Stephen P. Clark Government Center in downtown Miami. She arranged blankets over pieces of cardboard on the pavement. At 67 years old, Rebecca told reporters that she had been homeless for roughly 15 years, moving from streets to shelters, from borrowed couches back to sidewalks, and then through the cycle again. Her story does not prove that she came from Miami Beach. Public reporting does not establish that she was displaced by a camping arrest, and it would be wrong to invent the missing parts of her life. But Rebecca reveals something important the nightly count cannot. Homelessness is rarely one fixed location. A person may be counted inside a shelter in January, sleep on a relative's floor in March, spend several nights in a car during summer, and return to the street by August. Every temporary roof changes where that person appears in official data. None of those movements necessarily creates a home. For someone in their late 60s, movement carries a physical price. Packing blankets before sunrise, finding a restroom, protecting medication, charging a phone, and walking through tropical heat are not small inconveniences. They can consume the energy required to attend an appointment or meet an outreach worker. A shelter bed can interrupt that danger. It can provide air conditioning, water, food, security, and a connection to services. For one night, that matters enormously. But Rebecca's 15-year cycle shows why one night cannot be the final measurement. If the placement ends before permanent housing is available, the same person may return outside with fewer belongings and less trust. If a borrowed couch disappears, the official system may not notice until an outreach team finds that person on another sidewalk. If someone moves across a city boundary, one jurisdiction records improvement, while another inherits the emergency. This is the human reality hidden inside the phrase, "Where did they go?" Betting, it is not a question with one destination. It is a chain of temporary answers: shelter, jail, vehicle, couch, hospital, treatment, sidewalk, then sometimes shelter again. Rebecca's cardboard bed sat outside the building where county decisions are made. Above her were offices, records, programs, and people trying to manage homelessness. Below those windows was a woman still living through its consequences. Her location was visible. But the 15 years of movement that placed her there remained invisible. To know whether Miami Beach's decline represents lasting progress, we have to follow those temporary destinations and ask how many actually lead to a door that stays open. There is no single list showing where every person removed from Miami Beach eventually slept. That absence matters. Between January 2024 and February 2026, police records show that 189 people were transported to shelters after encounters over outdoor sleeping. During the same period, officers made roughly 6 times as many camping arrests. Those arrests did not represent 6 times as many different people. Some individuals were arrested repeatedly. The comparison still reveals the shape of the system. Shelter is one destination, jail is another. But many journeys continue after both doors reopen. A person taken to shelter may receive food, a shower, medical attention, and contact with a caseworker. That can become the first real step towards stability. Another person may leave because the placement separates them from a partner, cannot accommodate a pet, restricts belongings, or feels unsafe because of past trauma. Not every shelter has the same rules, and not every refusal has the same cause. A person arrested for camping may spend hours or days away from the street. Their original sleeping place can be cleared while they are gone. When released, they may carry fewer possessions, have no transportation, and no longer know where nearby outreach workers will search for them. Some people stay temporarily with friends. Others sleep in vehicles, motels, hospitals, treatment programs, or smaller outdoor locations. A few reach permanent housing. The public count sees only where they are found on the survey night, not how often they moved before arriving there. This is why the county-wide increase is important, but not absolute proof of one direct migration. Miami-Dade's 1,184 unsheltered residents cannot all be described as people exported from Miami Beach. Different communities face evictions, disability, addiction, family breakdown, migration, and rising living costs. Yet when one small city reports a record low, while the surrounding county reports its highest street count since 2008, displacement becomes a question that cannot be ignored. The cleanest measurement would follow outcomes over time: shelter entry, jail release, return to the street, and permanent housing. Without that continuity, a successful encounter can mean anything from receiving a phone number to receiving an apartment key. Those are not equal endings. Miami Beach has demonstrated that enforcement can rapidly change what tourists and residents see. It has not demonstrated that every person removed became safer. And even perfect outreach would face a deeper obstacle. The city can move people between locations, but it cannot refer them into affordable homes that do not exist. That shortage is hidden inside Miami's glittering new skyline. Miami is not failing to build. It is building for a different customer. Glass towers continue to rise above Biscayne Bay. New apartments branded residences, waterfront condominiums, and multi-million-dollar penthouses promise another version of the city's future. Construction cranes suggest abundance, but abundance at one price does not solve deep scarcity at another. Calling these buildings empty ghost towers would go beyond the evidence. A condominium listed for sale may still be occupied, used seasonally, or held by an investor. Even a genuinely vacant luxury unit remains private property, priced far beyond what a person leaving the street can pay. The real contradiction is much more difficult. Miami-Dade has an estimated shortage of roughly 90,000 affordable and available homes for renter households below 80% of the area's median income. Without major additions, researchers projected that gap could approach 116,000 units by 2030. At the same time, many of the occupations expected to grow fastest, home health aides, cooks, servers, housekeepers, medical assistants, warehouse workers, and delivery drivers, pay median wages below $19 an hour. Researchers estimated that workers in those jobs could reasonably afford housing costing about $650 to $1,000 per month. In Miami, that price range is almost impossible to find. Even the word workforce can hide the mismatch. At one publicly supported workforce housing development in Miami Beach studios were offered for nearly $2,400 per month. The units met the program's income formulas, yet critics argued that the people the project was supposed to serve could still become rent-burdened. This is how homelessness can grow beneath a skyline filled with new housing. The hotel employee changing sheets in a luxury suite may return to an overcrowded apartment. The restaurant worker serving tourists may share a room with relatives. A home health aide caring for an older resident may spend more than half of each paycheck staying housed. None of them ever appears in a street count. But remove one shift, raise one rent, lose one roommate, or add one medical bill, and the distance between an apartment and a borrowed couch can collapse quickly. After the couch comes a motel, a vehicle, or the pavement. Luxury construction is not the direct cause of every homeless life, and handing private condominiums to people outside is not a realistic policy. The deeper failure is a market producing visible abundance while leaving the housing most workers can afford nearly invisible. And that brings us to Miami's largest hidden population, people without secure homes who never appear in the official homeless total. The largest number in this story is not 800 arrests or 1,184 people on the street. It is more than 66,000. A 2026 analysis of U.S. Census data estimated that over 66,000 Miami-Dade residents were living doubled up, temporarily staying in somebody else's home because they could not afford a stable place of their own. Florida education data indicated that roughly 11,000 children were part of this broader, hidden housing crisis. These numbers require an important warning. They are not the official HUD homeless count, and they should not be presented as 66,000 people sleeping outdoors. The estimate describes residents sharing spare rooms, couches, and living room floors. Some families also survive week to week in motels, but those motel households were not included in the 66,000 doubled up estimate. They have a roof on the night of the count. What many do not have is control over tomorrow night. Imagine a mother waiting until everyone is asleep before unfolding a blanket beside a dining table. A child keeps school clothes inside a plastic bag because there is no dresser. A father whispers during a phone call, afraid the landlord will discover that too many people are staying inside the apartment. No tent appears, no sidewalk is blocked, no drone finds them. Yet every day depends on another person continuing to say yes. This form of instability can remain hidden for months. Families rotate between relatives to avoid becoming a burden. Children change schools or try to study inside crowded rooms. Adults take early shifts while pretending to coworkers that the motel couch or floor is temporary, even when temporary has lasted a year. Definitions decide who becomes visible. HUD's narrower measure shapes the official count and much of the housing assistance connected to it. Education agencies use a broader definition for children because unstable housing can destroy attendance, health, and learning long before a family reaches the pavement. Both definitions measure something real. Neither should be used to blur the difference between sleeping outside and living doubled up. But if Miami celebrates only the disappearance of tents, it may miss the pressure building behind thousands of closed doors. The next person forced outside may not arrive from another city. They may come from a living room 2 blocks away after one argument, one eviction notice, or one final night on a borrowed couch. And when that person becomes visible, the question is not only where they sleep, it is whether the city still sees who they are before police cameras and headlines arrive. Just before midnight on April 8th, 2026, Arnett Johnson saw something that did not belong on an Alapata street. A 6-year-old boy was walking alone in the darkness. Johnson looked around for a parent. No one appeared. He called Miami police, remained with the child, and waited until officers arrived. Police later praised him as the Good Samaritan who may have prevented something far worse from happening. The person protecting that child had no home himself. Johnson had been sleeping on a neighborhood bench for about 6 months after serving time in prison. Every night the city treated that bench as his bedroom because he had no private door to close. Yet on this night, being present made him the adult who noticed danger when nobody else did. Johnson did not describe himself as a hero. He said he had done what anyone would probably do. In another interview, he explained it through faith. He believed God had sent him there. His action does not erase his past, and his past does not erase his action. That distinction is essential in a debate built around labels. Homeless can become shorthand for threat addiction disorder or failure. Former prisoner can reduce a person to the worst chapter of their history. Once those labels attach, the public can stop expecting judgment, kindness, or responsibility from the person carrying them. Johnson broke that frame by paying attention. This story should not be romanticized. Sleeping on a bench did not give him a special moral purity, and one good act does not explain everything about a human life. The point is more, basic housing status cannot measure human value. There is another uncomfortable contrast. When an unhoused person is accused of breaking a rule, the system can record the location, time charge, and arrest. When that same person protects a child, there is no program created by gratitude. News cameras leave. Public attention moves on. Unless housing or support follows the Good Samaritan, may return to the same bench. Visibility lasted as long as the heroic moment. Miami's challenge is not to sort everyone outside into heroes and villains. It is to build a response capable of protecting public spaces while recognizing that the people sleeping there remain neighbors, witnesses, workers, parents, patients, and citizens. Arnett saw a vulnerable child and stayed. The next test is whether Miami can see vulnerability in Arnett and stay long enough to help. That requires something more durable than a shelter offer made beside a police car. It requires a place designed for the reasons people keep saying no. If arrests are not housing, what would a better response actually look like? Miami-Dade is testing one possible answer. County commissioners approved more than $10.6 million over 7 years for the Better Way Navigation Center, an 80-bed, low-barrier facility planned in the Liberty City area. Its purpose is not simply to place people behind another door for one night. It is designed to connect short-term safety with case management treatment and a route towards stable housing. The money will come from a food and beverage tax. Better Way of Miami will operate the center serving homeless adults across Miami-Dade. The important innovation is not the building. It is what the center intends to stop demanding at the entrance. Pets will be welcomed. Couples in extended or non-traditional households can remain together. Entry rules are intended to be more flexible than those at many traditional shelters, including fewer barriers involving curfews, sobriety, and drug testing. The operator also describes around-the-clock access, housing navigation, peer support, and trauma-informed care. Each detail responds to a reason people sometimes refuse shelter. A dog may be the only relationship someone has left. A partner may provide protection. Strict schedules can conflict with late work. Addiction and mental illness do not disappear because a bed becomes available. Lowering those barriers does not mean eliminating responsibility. It means creating enough stability for responsibility to become possible. But the center must be judged as a promise, not a proven success. As of the latest public information, Better Way's own website still described the facility as opening soon. 80 beds would also be small beside more than 1,000 people counted outside countywide, and microscopic beside the broader population living doubled up. The real test begins after admission. How many people accept placement? How many remain? How quickly do they reach treatment, income identification, and permanent housing? How many return to the street or jail within 6 months? If affordable exits remain blocked, a navigation center can become a waiting room. If those exits work, it can become the missing bridge between outreach and a key. Miami needs public order. It also needs shelters people can realistically enter and homes they can eventually afford. The answer is therefore not enforcement or services. It is whether enforcement leads reliably to services and whether services lead reliably to housing. Anything less may clear the sidewalk without ending the journey. Miami Beach counted 93 people sleeping outside. That may reflect progress, Public spaces became cleaner. Residents saw fewer encampments. But 93 is not the ending. Nearly 800 arrests cannot tell us how many people found housing. A county-wide count of 1,184 cannot explain every path that produced it. And 66,000 doubled-up residents cannot be added to the official total, as though every definition means the same thing. Numbers answer different questions. What matters is what happens next. Does an encounter end with another arrest, or a bed someone can accept? Does that bed lead to treatment and permanent housing, or back to the sidewalk? Can a worker losing a couch find help before becoming visible to a drone? Miami Beach has shown that a city can remove homelessness from view. Miami-Dade must show whether a region can prevent it, treat it, and end it. So, did the crisis disappear? The evidence says no. Part entered shelters. Part entered jails. Part moved beyond the frame. A larger crisis was hidden behind closed doors. Tell us what success should mean in your city, and subscribe as we follow where America's street crisis moves next. An empty sidewalk is an image. A stable home is an outcome. Disclaimer. This documentary is for educational and journalistic purposes only. It discusses homelessness, poverty, mental health, addiction-related issues, housing policy, and public spending. Composite characters are based on patterns from public records, housing research, shelter data, court filings, and published case studies. They are not intended to identify any specific private individual. This video does not promote illegal activity, drug use, harassment, or harmful behavior. Some footage has been edited or blurred for privacy, safety, and compliance with YouTube community guidelines.